There are few stories that persist throughout time, in myth or modern-day media, with the same impact 30 years later that you may have felt the first time viewing it. This is the story of how one woman changed the world. I'm Esme Silverthorne, and welcome to Xena Warrior Princess. As a young girl, I would often fantasize about going on grand adventures, fighting monsters, and vanquishing evil. I give the credit to three major influences: Sailor Moon, Elder Scrolls II, Daggerfall, and of course, Xena Warrior Princess. If you happen to be of the age bracket where that name doesn't sound familiar to you, allow me to pontificate. Xena Warrior Princess was a television show filmed in the stunning backdrop of New Zealand between 1995 and 2001. A fella by the name of Robert Traper wrote, produced, and directed for the series, along with another fella by the name of Sam Raimi. Sam Raimi, why is that name familiar? Hold on, let's check his wiki listing. Oh my god, it's the Evil Dead guy. Hey, that's cool. Oh, it says he also did the most recent Doctor Strange film, which unfortunately suffered immensely from the modern-day Disney disease.
Oh, I mean, I wasn't... What? They're calling me, so I gotta... Bye!
But you know what? Okay. Raimi, you work. Evil Dead is a great classic, and I am so very glad it took him great places regardless.
See this? This is my boomstick!
Anyway, this show follows Xena, the anti-hero turned protagonist, played by Lucy fucking Lawless, which is a hell of a name, and her plucky, blonde-haired storyteller, Gabrielle, played by Renee O'Connor. The entire plot of the story usually revolves around Xena going on a Monster of the Week type adventure, her love interests, or even great battles, while also slowly uncovering her personal history, which initially starts off as a bit of a mystery. She went from a tyrant, warlord, and a terrible force of nature that Ares himself would bottom for, seriously look at this man, he just wants it so bad, to a selfless hero who offers everything from medical aid to injured travelers to embroidery.
Xena taught me to swing a sword and embroider linen for my wedding chest.
You embroider?
I have many skills.
I always like to imagine it is Gabrielle telling the story of those episodes, and who is voicing the title sequence. Speaking of, here is the full title sequence for your viewing pleasure.
In a time of ancient gods, warlords, and kings, a land in turmoil cried out for a hero. She was Xena, a mighty princess forged in the heat of battle. The power, the passion, the danger. Her courage will change the world.
It's difficult to really get into how this show is made without also going into how Xena was created to begin with. Now, I'm a junior journalist here, so some of this is hearsay, and anything I have sources for, I'll make sure to mark clearly in this video. If you have any corrections or sources yourself, feel free to leave them in the comments. Xena was originally written as a 3-episode character for the television show Hercules: The Legendary Journey, starring Kevin Sorbo. Yes, that Kevin Sorbo.
Rather have your company than this wall you want to build.
What if I...
She was meant to guest star and then die for the plot on the 3rd episode, as so many women are fated to do in demi-modern media. Unfortunately for male Xena, she became so popular in those episodes, and the producers were so impressed that they began production of a show of her own. That's Xena Warrior Princess. So this is a bit of a side tangent, but I actually watched all Xena episodes leading up to this video for research, and self-realization. And let me tell ya, if people were stoked about Xena in the episode she starred in, they must have had a froggin' aneurysm when they watched the show, because holy frog, the quality between episodes she started in versus the show she starred in, it's stark. You know, it's funny, because originally, Lawless wasn't the first choice for the role. A woman by the name of Vanessa Angel was considered first, but she got ill. But don't worry, she was then shortly after replaced by Kim Delaney. Kim Delaney had a manager who then called the producers of the show and told them no, and then they asked 2 other actresses before finally settling on Lawless. But at last, Lucy Lawless was cast, and her hair was dyed black to fit the role of evil warrior seductress, a stark contrast to her features people often felt gave her that trademark icy countenance and steely charisma. Immediately entering the first few episodes, you get this vibe that Xena takes precisely zero shit from everyone, but also knows how to use her wit and charm to get out of hostile situations. With her nefarious reputation, she often slides right into the criminal world and is able to discern their weak points or complete her mission right under their noses without anyone getting hurt. This brings us to Xena's journey as a character. I would argue that Xena is always self-assured, confident, and independent, so her journey isn't one of self-discovery, but one of redemption. As previously mentioned, because of her fierce reputation, she has a bit of a hard time finding people who trust her. She's often treated with disdain, hostility, or fear. Gee, it sure would be useful to have a fun, chipper, charismatic friend who could... Gabrielle goes from farm girl to fabulous as Xena's counterpart, acting as her good conscience and, frankly, a breath of fresh air to the often menacing and threatening aura of this walking, talking middle finger. She has flaws. At least, talking in the first season, she's often used as a plot device to be rescued. It's all to preserve what the show calls her blood innocence, which means she hasn't killed anyone in her life. At some point, I was just sitting there thinking, okay, so she can't kill anyone. At least someone teach her to use a whip or do that cool spinny kick thing, self-defense, anything. Alas, no sooner did those words leave my lips before she learns to use a bow staff from the Amazons later in the season, which is so cool. But she is still often baggage at first glance. It took careful thought and consideration, and me actually stepping away from the writing process of this video to consider why it was written this way. In comparison to Xena, who is a certified warrior goddess with the ability to flip over chasms, Gabrielle is a young girl who is just setting out on her own and is still learning where her skills play a role in Xena's life. She is still growing, both as a person and as a warrior. I'm actually glad it isn't just 2 super confident fighters wrestling for the spotlight in the script. This show is about a warrior princess and her bard companion, someone who lifts her spirits and keeps it light. That's her role. And now we've heard the gist of the 2 main characters, Xena and Gabrielle. Let's talk about why this show was so influential back in my day, and overall what it says about modern day media. Xena was more than just a TV show to a lot of folk. People in the LGBTQIA+ community saw Xena as a symbol of representation, and they are very right to do so. Xena and Gabrielle kissing on screen and their continued love interest may be one that everyone has heard about, but what about the time that Xena was a trans ally, even back in the 90s? Yeah. Now this is dipping into season 2 a little bit, but it's worth mentioning for this particular topic. In one episode, Xena competes for what is essentially the Miss America pageant. Season 2 was wild, but we'll talk about that next time. This is where she meets someone by the name of Miss Artifice. The plot is silly and very, very camp, but the point of the story is that not only does Xena know that Miss Artifice is trans, but she keeps her secret.
What made you think I'd tell?
You really don't get it, do you? I guess being born a woman, you wouldn't. This is a chance to use a part of me most people usually laugh at, or worse. The part I usually have to hide. Only here that part works for me. You see?
I think so.
Look, I don't expect you to understand, and I'm sorry I got you as tuned. I just hope you let me quit the pageant in private instead of going public with it.
No way. May the best person win.
And they even share an on-screen kiss. It is a beautiful and powerful moment, and as a cis person, I can't really comment on the trans experience, so I can only imagine what seeing that on TV might have felt like for someone struggling to be themselves during this time. As a queer person, it is one of the many reasons that I am proud to be a fan. Xena herself stepped into a role that is normally designed for a man, becoming a warlord and leading men into battle. From her perspective, she would have sympathy for someone trying to live their truth despite its challenges. She also would protect their secret with her life, something that she absolutely does. Now, this episode isn't perfect, but it was written with intent and its message is clear. Kiss more trans girls, y'all. I've given it a lot of thought and I've done a lot of research. There's a wonderful article on the matter that I recommend everyone read called Hacking Xena, Technological Innovation and Queer Influence in Production of Mainstream Television by Elena Maris. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. There should be a link on screen. If not, it'll be in the credits below. In this paper, she says, quote, "Early online fandom allowed for significant queer influence on mainstream televisual narratives. I argue that technological affordances of the internet enabled lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, LGBTQ groups to communicate their desired queered content directly to production, leading to queer hacks of mainstream entertainment." So in this document, Elena Maris points out that Tildis, which is the screen name of the co-executive producer and writer Steven Sears, often visited fan forums, websites, and chat rooms despite being against studio regulations. This led to what she discovered is, quote, "a close-knit relationship with online Xena communities." Name any show nowadays with the balls to go against a studio and write for the fans. My point is, haters can write this off as incidental, writing all that they want, but during this episode in the closing credits, when aired in the United Kingdom, a respectful line of remembrance was written, in loving memory of Keith K. Walsh. Keith Walsh was the brother of Chris Mannheim. Chris Mannheim is a writer for the show, and her brother passed away in 1992 due to complications from AIDS. He was actually the inspiration for Miss Artifice's character and this story. Moreover, Miss Artifice herself was portrayed by Karen Dior, an adult video star for the LGBTQIA category who had just moved into mainstream film and TV. 2 years before the episode aired, Dior had herself been diagnosed with AIDS. She sadly died of AIDS-related complications in 2004. This completely challenged then-current notions regarding AIDS and methods of transmissions of the disease. This was allyship. Going even deeper, Lucy Lawless and Renee O'Connor, the stars of the show, also appeared in the Sydney Gay and Lesbian Mardi Gras of February 1999, and Lawless wore the gown Miss Amphipolis wore in this episode. What we can take from this writing is that it was genuine. It's not just from top studio executives who need the bottom line and less risk. This series was written out of love. It's the love of a brother, the community, and its people. Here's another fun fact for you. Lucy Lawless actually married one of the producers on the show. Remember that guy I showed you earlier? Yeah, this one? She's still married to him today. And that's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to writing synergizing with that fanbase. Xena's already had great values from the jump, but what about how they handled the topic of feminism, which is a lot more of a touchy subject at the time? Xena frequently flips the roles in a world of hyper-masculinity, favoring the sword and physical combat over traditional feminine, softer presentation. That's not to say she doesn't appreciate or honor the tasks often reserved for women. Actually, it's quite the opposite. The point of feminism is that women can fit into any of the roles men can, and that none of the things women do with their lives deserve to be looked down on or even overlooked in the way of importance. There have been a few examples in that era that had very I'm not like other girls vibes, which often gives off an entitled opinion of women who choose or can't choose more domestic or conservative roles in their lifetimes. This easily pits women against other women. Ironically, it also only appeals to one demographic, and the patriarchy has no place in Xena Warrior Princess. Listen, folks, it's like this. There's a situation where there's going to be some action scenes and fighting hordes of smelly scoundrels. The one who's going to be doing the kicking is Xena Warrior Princess. Lucy Lawless wasn't at first sure how to feel about being a feminist icon. She was quoted as saying, quote, "It's one thing for Xena to be it, but another for Lucy Lawless to be somebody's role model, and I thought that was too heavy a burden. It's a bit intimidating." I can't be totally sure about the series of events, but I'll say this. It seems like eventually Lawless got used to the idea and felt honored that so many women looked up to her. She was later having said, quote, "I have met a heap of women that seem incredibly inspired by the show and not inspired to be like Xena, but inspired to be themselves." They use the word empowered. It feels kind of new agey to me, but it's a great word, and it's a perfect expression for what they're feeling. A woman goes out and buys a Harley because she's always wanted to. That's great. Xena's story was written about her freedom, her choices, and sexuality. Xena's not a victim of the plot, studio meddling, or any of the men she falls in love with. Xena is tough as nails, scary as hell, and somehow the most comforting presence in a hospital setting. She's also endearing in her own way. Countless men have offered her a kingdom or an army, or, even Ulysses himself tried to give up his throne in all of Ithaca to be with Xena. She doesn't want any of that. She wants to right the wrongs she set upon the world and help people where she can, as often as she can. And I mean, yeah, be the best fighter around, though that's usually unspoken. It's just kind of the vibe I get from the enjoyment she gets out of combat. It doesn't feel like she gets a kick out of violence. She just finds joy in learning techniques from other fighters and unleashing them upon her enemies. Granted, there are a few silly, non-realistic things in the show, like that one. Or this one.
She's got the baby!
Here, get rid of Joe! No!
You know what? Let me show you some of my favorite goofiest moments, as a treat for making it this far into the video.
Well, hello, handsome.
Like the man of Tresor of Phrygia, she could get a wind down at one go without taking a breath while the flute played.
You must be Sharon.
No, I'm Tallulah, the dancing girl. Of course I'm Sharon. Who else would be crazy enough to be down here?
Star resolve. Can you doubt it? All you have to do is look at her to see she's unnatural, an affront to God.
What's your name?
Caesar. Julius Caesar.
Caesar, Julius Caesar again.
So you lose a few crummy temples. Big deal. This is love.
That's way harsh, Cupid. I'm Aphrodite, the goddess of love. Temples are my kahuna.
I had so much fun sharing my love of this once-in-a-lifetime television show with you adventurers. After all I've learned from this show, one thing does remain clear. Her courage will change the world. If you liked this video, please consider subscribing to this channel and let me know in the comments if I should review Season 2 and beyond, or even if you have suggestions for other retro content that I should talk about. And don't forget to check out my links in the description for my Twitch and other ways of getting in touch with me like Twitter. I'm Esme Silverthorn. Thanks for tuning in. See you next time.